Hi guys, this is DP Tech Guy, and as an intro video to my channel, I wanted to show you my favorite deck. And just so we all understand, this is not necessarily a deck profile, more as a deck core profile. So I'm gonna show you the cards that I always include in the deck, and I'm gonna have some potential staples that you could put in, but it's not certain. You could change the deck however you want. This is just how I like to play the deck, and I just thought it would be a good video to show. Okay, starting off for the most important monster, 3 copies of Chamber Dragonmaid. It says, when this card is normal summoned or special summoned, you could add 1 Dragonmaid spell and trap from your deck to your hand at the start of the battle phase. You can return this card to the hand, and if you do, special summon a level 7 or higher Dragonmaid monster from your hand or graveyard. You can only use each effect of Chamber Dragonmaid 1 per turn. I love this card. This card is what I use to search out the powerful spells and traps like Dragonmaid Changeover, Hospitality, and Dragonmaid Tiding. But also, this monster lets you re-summon back a House Dragonmaid, or even a show that might have got destroyed and sent to a graveyard, besides the other level 7 or higher Dragonmaid monsters. I always include 3 of her. Next up is 3 copies of Kitchen Dragonmaid. A lot of people don't run this anymore. Definitely they don't run it at 3, but I still think it's good. This card's effect says, this card is normal summon or special summon. You can add 1 Dragonmaid monster from your deck to your hand, except Kitchen Dragonmaid. Then send 1 Dragonmaid monster from your hand to the graveyard. At the start of the battle phase, you can return this card to your hand, and if you do, special summon a level 8 Dragonmaid monster from your hand or graveyard. You can only use this effect once per turn. The reason I like using this card is because you could get potentially any lower level Dragonmaid monster to your hand and then pitch any unwanted Dragonmaid monster that you might have in your hand, like the level 7s or higher. It's an easy way to get them in the graveyard because, you know, all the Dragonmaid's effects will just bring them back to your hand. But also, it lets you can't send a monster like Chamber Dragonmaid or Parlor Dragonmaid to the graveyard and then bring them back with cards like Show or Dragonmaid Nurse. So I like her at 3, so I run her at 3. Next up is 3 copies of Parlor Dragonmaid. This card says, this card is normal summon or special summon. You can send 1 Dragonmaid card from your deck to the graveyard, except Parlor Dragonmaid. At the start of battle phase, you can return this card to your hand, and if you do, special summon 1 level 8 Dragonmaid monster from your hand or graveyard. You can only use this effect of Parlor Dragonmaid once per turn. She is here to send your copies of Dragonmaid Changeover so you could get it to your hand quickly. Or if you need the effect of Dragonmaid Tiding, you send it to the graveyard. I think this is the second best monster in this deck. So I run her at 3. Next up is 2 copies of Nurse Dragonmaid. This card says, when this card is normal special summon, you could target 1 level 4 lower Dragonmaid monster from your graveyard, except Nurse Dragonmaid special summon. At the start of battle phase, you can return this card to your hand, and if you do special summon 1 level 7 Dragonmaid monster from your hand to your graveyard, you can only use this effect of Nurse Dragonmaid once per turn. She is a good card to add to your hand with Kitchen and pitch another level 4 like Parlor from your hand to a graveyard, and then you could normal summon her or special summon her, bring back that copy that you just pitched to a graveyard so you could get their effects. I run her at 2 because it gives you a search target in the deck if you happen to draw one. Okay. I know people don't run this card, but I like running every card from the archetype in the deck, and I actually think it's a good card. Laundry Dragonmaid. This card says, if this card is normal special summon, you can send the top 3 cards from your deck to a graveyard. At the start of the battle phase, you can return this card to your hand, and if you do special summon a level 7 Dragonmaid monster from your hand or graveyard, you can only use this effect of Laundry Dragonmaid once per turn. If she gets summoned to the field, it lets you send the top 3 cards to the graveyard. So they could be copies of Dragonmaid Changeover, Dragonmaid Tiding, or some of the other level 4 or lower Dragonmaid monsters. And the thing about Dragonmaid cards, you can always find a way to get the cards you just sent to the graveyard back to your hand. It's a little random, but you never know when you might need it. You can also include cards that have an effect that once they hit the graveyard, if you want to put them in the deck and make a Dragonmaid / something deck. Okay, now for the big monsters. 1 Dragonmaid Tenkek, 1 Dragonmaid Lopar, 2 copies of Dragonmaid Ernest, and 1 copy of Dragonmaid Niord. Yeah. They all have the effect. At the end of the battle phase, you can return this card to your hand, and if you do special summon a level 3 Dragonmaid from your hand, this is these 2. And these 2 special summon a level 2 Dragonmaid monster from your hand. But they have certain bonus effects too. Tenkek cannot be destroyed by card effects if you control a fusion monster. And you can only use effect once per turn. That's basically, they all have that. They can't be destroyed if you have a fusion monster on the field. Tenkek, you could quick effect, discard this card, target 1 Dragonmaid monster on the field you control. It gains 200 attack until the end of the turn. What you could do is the way you chain your cards a certain way to where you could pitch this card at the battle phase and boost another level 7 or higher Dragonmaid monster you have in your hand, on the field, by 2,000 points, and then have like a Parlor or a Kitchen on the field after you pitch them, and then summon to the hand so you could special summon it from the graveyard. So you get the effect and you still get to send it to the field. You just gotta know how to do your chain links right. Lopar. Her effect is you could discard this card, target 1 face-up monster on the field. Players cannot activate the target effects monster on the field this turn. A lesser version of Infinite Permanence. So that's why I run her. Only on your turn. The only one that I run more than 1 copy Ernest. The reason why I run her more than one copy is same reason why I run 2 copies of Nurse. In case you draw one, you still have one in the deck. But even if you draw this one, this is still a good card to have in your hand because its effect states, quick effect, you can discard this card, special summon 1 level 4 Dragonmaid monster for your hand. So it's the same thing as Tinkek. You could order your chain links right to where at the start of the battle phase, you could discard it to special summon a level 4 Dragonmaid monster from your hand to the field, let's say Nurse. And then when Nurse's turn comes around to activate her floating effect, you can send it to the hand and bring back the Ernest that you just discarded to the field. So it's pretty good, I think. Next up, and the last Dragonmaid monster I run in the main deck, Dragonmaid Neo. Its effect is you could discard this card and target 1 monster in either graveyard. You already shuffle it to the deck. It's not a quick effect, unfortunately, but you can use this card to recycle hand traps that you might have already used in your deck, or even if you know an opponent has a resource in the graveyard that they might use on their turn, you could use this card to shuffle it back into the deck to where they actually draw it and then discard it to be able to get that effect. So I run it. Okay, for the spell cards, I run 1 Dragonmaid changeover. It's the fusion card of the deck. You could I think it's alright to just run 1 because it could recur itself by selecting the Dragonmaid monster on the field. You could send that monster to your hand and then add changeover from the graveyard to your hand. So as long as it doesn't get banished, you'll always be able to use this card. And it's a good card to send to graveyard with Parlor. So it's needed because of house and show. And it's a good card. People don't usually run this many, but I like this card just because it lets me get the resources back quicker. But you can always cut it down or even cut it all together if you want. Dragonmaid Hospitality. Special summon 1 Dragonmaid monster from your hand or graveyard in defense position. Then you can send 1 Dragonmaid monster with the same attribute but different level from your deck to graveyard. You can only use 1 Dragonmaid Hospitality once per turn. It's just an easy way to get the high level dragons to a graveyard and special summon a lower one from your hand or graveyard. So I run 3. And probably the best card that's not a monster is 3 copies of Dragonmaid Siding. This card says, target 1 dragon monster you control and 1 card your opponent controls or in the graveyard. Return them to the hand. You can banish this card from your graveyard, special summon 1 Dragonmaid monster from your hand or graveyard in defense position, but return it to your hand at the end of the phase. You can only use 1 effect of Dragonmaid once per turn. If you send this to a graveyard with Parlor, you could use its second effect to banish it and then special summon 1 Dragonmaid monster from your hand. That's good. If you set and activate on your opponent's turn, you could target 1 dragon monster you control, which is Dragonmaids are all dragons, so, and it doesn't matter if they get bounced to your hand. Most of the time you want them to get bounced. And then you pick 1 card for your opponent's controls or in the graveyard and return to your hand. So it's a good way to get rid of any resources that might have in the graveyard and or a monster on the field that you might not be able to deal with, or even just to bait out interaction. So pretty good card. 3. Here are some cards that I like to include in this deck. Like I said in the beginning of this episode, these are not must include. It's just what I like. So it's up to you if you want. Red Eyes Darkness Maw Dragon. You can special summon this card from your hand by banishing 1 face-up dragon type monster you control. Once per turn, you can special summon one dragon type monster from your hand or a graveyard, except Red Eyes Darkness Metal. It's a good way to bring back a Nurse Dragonmaid that might be in the graveyard, which will activate her effect when she gets on the field to bring back another Dragonmaid monster. So, and the monster that you banish off this, you can always bring back with Guard Dragon Pissy. Okay. If you're using a Guard Dragon or any Lick monster, you could run which Noctovision Dragon, which this card says when your opponent activates a card effect that targets a face down card, you could control quick effect, banish this card from the graveyard, negate the activation, and your opponent cannot target that face down card effect for the rest of the turn. That effect rarely comes up, but it could save potential face down Dragonmaid Tidings you might have on the field from getting destroyed. So that effect could be used every once in a while. The main effect that you're going to use is if a Dark Dragon monster is special summoned to the field, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. So, if you summon a Link monster like Dragonmaid Guard Dragon Pisty, you'll be able to special summon this card from your hand. And then, if you want, you can link both of them off to make Heavenly Spheres, which will activate second effect. That if this card is sent to a graveyard as a link material, you could draw one card. So, and another good thing about this card, it's a level 7 or higher dragon. So you can use as fusion material to make Kitchen Dragonmaid or Dragonmaid Shio. I like to run the Rocket package, which is 3 copies of Rocket Tracer, 1 Rocket Recharger, and 3 copies of Quick Launch. This is how I usually get into Burrow Load Savage Dragon. You could cut down on the Rocket Tracers, but I would include a copy of a Rocket monster that's not Tracer, and Recharger is a good card to include because it's a level 4. So if you open a Quick Launch, you could special summon a Rocket Tracer from your deck to your field, and then pop any card you might have to special summon a Recharger from your deck, and that right there gives you levels to synchro summon a level 8. If you already have a Link monster in the graveyard, you could summon Burrow Load Savage Dragon, or if not, you could summon just another generic good level 8 monster. And since a lot of the cards in this deck could be recycled from the graveyard, this card is basically Monster Reborn. World Legacy Guard Dragon. When this card is activated, target 1 level 4 lower dragon monster from the graveyard and add it to your hand or special summon it. Once per turn, you can target 1 dragon monster you control. Move that monster you control to another of your monster zones. So I use this to bring back a level 4 or lower Dragonmaid monster from my graveyard to the field, and then I link off that Dragonmaid monster for Pissy, and then I use World Legacy Guard Dragon to move Pissy to the correct space to where I could use Pissy's effect and bring back a monster from that's graveyard or banished, which gives me more link materials or just cards to recycle. So this is what I run. And that's it. Like I said, this is more of a Dragonmaid core deck profile. So it's not a... You could change this however you want. Just wanted to show this deck because this is my all-time favorite deck. And I love playing it. even if it's might not necessarily be good. So, but that's it. Thank you so much for your time, and have a good night, and be careful.